I'm Al McFarland. Good afternoon, good evening. Wonderful day, historic day, a day we are with the Minnesota Historical Society Press, celebrating the release of the new Minnesota's Black Community in the 21st Century, a book created by the Minnesota Black Community Project. I'm Al McFarland. I'm the editor and owner of Insight News. My company is McFarland Media. And I've been a player in the media landscape for a generation. And one of the guiding lights, the powerhouses in Minneapolis, Minnesota media was Walter Scott. Walter Scott was the originator of the we called it, I think, the Minneapolis Negro Profiles, but there are several versions of the book that's being released tonight. And we'll talk about that. I'm pleased to be sharing this event with members of the Scott family, Anthony Scott and Shonda Scott. Dr. Shonda Scott, thank you for being along and being here. And together, we're going to walk our viewers and listeners through the genesis of the Minnesota Black Community in the 21st Century book. First of all, kudos to the both of you and to all of the members of the Scott family who have taken this mission to task and have committed to bringing the stories forward of our people. First impression, Dr. Shonda Scott, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind as you reflect on the accomplishment in bringing this product forward?
Well, I'm just very excited that, we were able to get it completed. We had a good model to follow. We followed the template that my dad left. And we had more resources than he did. We had the computer and, we had a lot more technology than what he did. So very useful, but it still was pretty difficult, trying to get it together. But like I said, we are happy with the product. It's a snapshot of what, the African Americans are doing in Minneapolis. Hope to by continuing to highlight in the.
So your brother, Anthony R. Scott, is the president of the Minnesota Black Community Project. The project that you all created is a nonprofit organization that highlights and celebrates the accomplishments of Blacks in Minnesota. Anthony, you spent a lot of years as a career counselor and a vocational expert for the state of Minnesota Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. You've also worked for the Social Security Office and your own private firm. You spent 20 years as a supervisor with Hennepin County Child Protection Unit, and you've also continued to work as an employment consultant in a lot of areas. Your work is critical, and alongside that mission work, that professional work, you've continued to carry the passion of your father, Walter Scott, in assuring that the record of Black accomplishment in Minnesota is acknowledged. What are your thoughts right now at the release of this book today?
Well, I'm just ecstatic. I'm so happy because it goes back, like I say, Dad's books go back to the 50s. Actually, when I was born, I always known him to be working on a project, working on a book, working on, that first book, the Minneapolis Beacon, the centennial edition of the Minneapolis Beacon, which I never knew why it was centennial. And at the same time, he had put together a book in Chicago called the Chicago Beacon. This is right around 1956. And then through the 60s and 70s, he had the other two books, Minneapolis Negro Profile and Minnesota's Black Community, which was done in the 70s. And it actually features you in one of those books, Al, as a real patriarch of, the work that Dad did. There's a group of people, Cecil Newman, Jeannie Cooper, Mary Kyle, that continue to keep us in the forefront and keep us in a positive vein and let the community know they overlook things that, really just aren't shining down in the community. And my dad was really dedicated to it. And another thing, he was really good at it. He was good at selling. He was good at, beating the drum for what he was doing. And, we're just so proud to be able to keep the legacy going.
Dr. Scott, let me introduce you properly. Dr. Chandra L. Scott is the secretary of your organization, Minnesota's Black Community Project, and you are an associate professor, a graduate coordinator, and a diversity and inclusion specialist at Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan. You earned your doctorate in adult education and organizational leadership with a focus on diversity in diversity education from the Teachers College at Columbia University and a master's degree from Harvard Graduate School of Education. You also have co-authored numerous scholarly books and articles on the topics of workforce diversity, education, eradicating racism, on human resource development and organizational leadership. In 2015, Dr. Scott, you were granted a prestigious Fulbright Specialist Award in Cape Town, South Africa, where you engaged in diversity education work focused on the areas of teaching and research. So you all bring just tremendous credentials and experience and passion to carrying on the legacy of your father. You know, I think back about the time I met Walter Scott, your dad. I was a young salesman at a company called Graphic Services in Northeast Minneapolis. I had started off as a reporter for the Pioneer Press and had worked in corporate for a bit, and then had an opportunity to go into a sales arena. And there is where I launched Insight News as a magazine. One of the days, your father showed up, and I tell you, his energy was magnetic. I still remember this feeling of being around a fluidity that was like gold or silver. I mean, that's the personality. He exuded this fluidity and clarity and preciousness. So this is how a young Al McFarland perceived and looked at and monitored and watched the work of your dad. I can tell you he was influencing me. Let me say, first of all, too, that for the people online, I want to, in the spirit of transparency, talk about the fact that I'm one of the people in this book, Minnesota's Black Community in the 21st Century. There is a mistake around my bio. It does say that I am a graduate of the University of Minnesota School of Journalism. I am not. I attended there. But having said that, I am honored and deeply pleased to be counted as a person that is worthy of being presented in this book. Talk about talk about how you guys came together to create this new project, because the other family involved besides the Scott family is the Crutchfield family. And I read the background, but I'm going to ask you, oh, there he is, Dr. Charles Crutchfield.
Hi there.
Hey, Dr. Crutchfield. I think it's so wonderful that two families put together an intent and executed the creation of this project. Tell that story. Let me start with you, Anthony, and then we'll bring Dr. Crutchfield in.
Well, really how the Crutchfields got involved with what we're doing with the nonprofit was really right at the beginning. We got an inquiry from Charles. He was so enamored in Dad's books. I mean, he would say, every time I pick up the books, I see somebody different. Every time I pick up the books, I see more people I know. And so he broached the idea with us of putting together a new book, and I started to reprint the Beacon book. That was the first book. And then we put our heads together. We formed a nonprofit with his father, with his brother, with Chris, with Dr. Charles II. And it just really just kind of flowed. When they got involved, it really just gave us a real partner in making sure that we could make this happen again. And Charles is, he's just an effervescent type person. And if he wants to get things done, he's going to be committed to it. And so together, we were able to use what my dad put together. And then with the energy and focus of the rest of the board, here we are today with Minnesota's Black Community, the 21st Century. And, it also goes back to the Hosmer Library, to Josh Leventhal at the Historical Society. But the heart and soul was really the families getting together and starting this project and forming a nonprofit group. And these things happened in almost lightning speed. I was told that to put a nonprofit together, you're going to need a lot of paperwork. It's going to take you a while. And my sister somehow put this together, and the nonprofit is up and functioning. We do Black History Month programs that I'll probably talk about a little later. But I'm glad, Charles, you joined us.
Yeah, I had a little technology challenge, but I'm with you now.
Well, Charles, good to see you. Dr. Crutchfield,
Thank
let me introduce you properly. And your family, like the Scotts, is a legendary legacy family in Minnesota. Dr. Charles E. Crutchfield III is vice president of Minnesota's Black Community Project. He is a board certified dermatologist and graduate of the Mayo Clinic School of Medicine and a clinical professor of dermatology at the University of Minnesota Medical School. Dr. Crutchfield is a Benedict Distinguished Visiting Professor of Biology at Carleton College. He's currently the medical director of the Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan. Dr. Crutchfield was also selected as one of the 100 most influential healthcare leaders in Minnesota. He's the past president of the Minnesota Association of Black Physicians. Doctor, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your leadership and for being part of the melding and demonstrating this model of cooperation between the Crutchfields and the Scotts. Talk about how this happened and your passion for this work and for the books.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I also want to say hello to the Scotts this evening. How it started, we moved into a new home many years ago, and unpacking boxes, I found the 3 previous books by the Scott's father, Walter, and I thought, these are absolute gems. These are phenomenal. And I showed it to my brother and I said, hey, Chris, these are just spectacular. And every time, just like Anthony said, every time I opened it, I'd see another person that I knew, or I'd see another friend or a family member or somebody that I grew up around. And I talked to my brother, Chris. I said, I wonder if there's a way of carrying this on and doing another one. So looking at one of the books, I saw this young woman in the back of one of the books with her picture, and it said, administrative assistant and everything else. And her name was Shauna. And I thought, I think I need some Google help here. So I Googled her name and it popped up as a professor at a university. So I thought, well, I better call that university and see if she knows anything about this person. And lo and behold, she said, that's me. And so I said, hey, let's get together. I think our first meeting was at the Global Market over in Minneapolis on Lake Street. We had dinner there together and we talked about getting another project together, and it just took off from there. And I can't say enough about Anthony and Shonda's leadership. And I know my brother Christopher is an attorney. He helped with the getting the nonprofit set up, and it's just been to infinity and beyond since then.
It's a beautiful work. Hopefully, before the program is over, we'll be able to show images of the cover of the book. But this is the kind of thing that, like the previous books, will land up as a keepsake in homes around Minnesota and around the country. You cannot, as you said, Dr. Crutchfield, put this away, put it down. You'll always come back to it, and you'll always find people you knew, and it'll always trigger memories that are dear to you. I loved looking at the previous books. Obviously, I loved the one that I was in way back when I was a young upstart, and I'm grateful to be in the one today. But there are just so many wonderful people. Each one has a magnificent, marvelous story. Let me ask you all, just top of mind, as you develop this, what stories, what people popped out? I know everybody is important, but you might have come across ones that just rang deeply in the course of your putting this together. I'm going to ask Dr. Scott first. Any one or two of the stories that really, sort of enveloped you and got you really into them?
Well, it was so many because as I said, I currently live in Michigan. Mm-hmm. So I've been out of the area for a while. So it was just an opportunity to reconnect with old friends. I can remember connecting with one of my high school friends, Kim Bedell, and she's in the book as well. So just a chance to reconnect with people as well as meet new people, like Tracy Bradford. She's an attorney I didn't meet, and she was just a fascinating woman, and she helped really to get the word out about the book. So it was just a great opportunity to reconnect with people that I grew up with and meet new people that have joined us since I've left.
Anthony, same question for you. Any stories, profiles that jump out at you?
Well, for me, Al, it's not so much just about doing the books. It's about the things that I find out in the process of doing the books. It's when we started just going to the Historical Society and Ted Hathaway, I was doing some research and he said, Walter Scott's your father. So he takes me to the bowels of the Historical Society and there's a whole file on Dad. All these pictures and things that I just hadn't seen before. Mm-hmm. So it just really began to fuel my interest and desire to keep this going. And also the research part, and also when we did the new book where we were able to actually have people come in and have their pictures taken. We actually were able to meet a lot of the people, and we put out calls as far as we could for people to be in the book, and all the reactions were great. I mean, everybody is just really behind what we're doing. And I think the books, they continue to be timely. When you look at Dad's books, 50s, 60s, and 70s, there's always things happening. In our community, there's always things. In current, you know, we have such unrest and we have such instability that I think what we're doing and what Dad really started us on is showing the other side of our community, to show that we have contributors, that we have people that are fully able to take the reins of and assist everyone in our community to make the Twin Cities and Minnesota a better place.
So I'm going to ask you to go deep on the question of why. You've addressed it a little bit, but spend a little more time on why your father was moved, why he was passionate about documenting and telling a different story, creating a different narrative about who we are.
Well, I think it was just his upbringing in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, where he grew up in a very vibrant Black community, where he saw businesses, he attended a great school, DuSable High School, where he graduated with a lot of the greats just from his community that were taught by a man named Walter Dyett, who was actually my dad's music teacher also. And he taught people like Johnny Griffin, Red Fox, Nat Cole. They either went to Phillips or they went to DuSable, and that was their rival. But I think Dad just saw the vibrancy of the community and the ability that he saw on a daily basis growing up in Chicago. He had no doubt in his mind that, you know, we're a very vibrant community, and it was his mission and quest to show this to the rest of the world.
So Dr. Crutchfield, jump in here. You started this by talking about how coming across some of the books that you had just piqued your curiosity and led you to reach out to Shonda. But what stories grabbed you as you reviewed in the old books, and what stories are grabbing you in the new book?
Well, growing up in the Twin Cities, I saw a lot of people that I recognized that I had seen growing up. For example, I remember when I was a little kid, we used to go eat at a place called Skip's Barbecue over North Minneapolis.
Yep.
And Skip was in the book. And I thought, hey, this is a place my father used to take me. My grandmother, Mary Jackson Ellis, was in the book. And she was the very first African-American Minneapolis public school teacher. And I remember the story with her was very interesting. She applied to become a teacher in Minnesota from West Virginia. And so her application in those days, they didn't have you check off what your nationality or ethnic background was. So the Minneapolis School Board accepted her. But when she moved here and they saw her, they rescinded the offer. They said, we made a mistake. And at the time, the mayor of Minneapolis was a guy by the name of Hubert Humphrey. And Hubert Humphrey got wind of this, that they were holding back a Black teacher in Minneapolis. And so did Mr. Newman, publisher of another newspaper at the time. And they joined together and they went after the school board. And they said, either you hire her or you're going to have a legal fight on your hands. And they backed down and they actually got her hired. And so she was the first Black Minneapolis public school teacher. And she taught the children of several vice presidents. She taught Mondale's children. She taught Judge Mile Lord's children. And so she did a great job. But just looking at all the different people in the book, from the barbers that I grew up with, Mr. Withers, it was amazing. And I realized at the time it was a tremendous project. And we did this with computers, but I can't imagine what Sean and Anthony's dad did. He did this without any computers at all.
Right.
But he did it to highlight what was going on at the time. And I'm not sure if he could fully grasp and appreciate the historical significance of these books years later. Without these books, we've lost a huge part of the record of Blacks in Minnesota over the last 60 years.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. talk about how the book is organized, Anthony. What are the parts, the elements? How does it flow? How did you design it?
Well, we really tried to follow the script that Dad did, where we had the various professions, the various fields, the various arts and entertainment, business, entrepreneurship, community service, education, government and public affairs, law and enforcement, media and communications, medicine and healthcare, religion, sports. And we really tried to cover the community just like Dad did. We wanted to highlight specific areas, bring people out, and encourage the young people to show them that there are role models out there. And so the book is pretty much organized like Dad's.
And then I think that is so important, especially now in this 21st century, because it seems like most of the media attention is on the negative. Like, what are African Americans doing? But somebody's getting arrested, somebody has the knee on their neck, or it's never showing anybody doing anything positive. So it's not very encouraging. And I think it really slights the Minnesota community by not letting them know about the talent that we have in the African American community.
Now, you all created a wonderful team to make this thing happen. I want to make sure we take time for you to give credit to acknowledge all the people that brought this project together. Maybe Dr. Scott, you and Anthony, you might take a minute to just say the names of and give kudos to people that helped you make this happen.
Well, it was just a lot of people, but we did have a fantastic project staff. So I would like to call their names. We had Kelly McGuire, Allison Cortez, Bruce Pelagi, Bryson Scott, Neil Yanfo, and Janetta Sims. We also had some great cover models. We tried to use people that we knew. And so we'd like to thank Mr. Glanton, Mr. Wayne Glanton, George Scott, Willie Ruth Hall, Dr. Josie Johnson, Ari Crutchfield, and Bryson Scott, who are our cover models. And I think they did a fantastic job, as you can see here, looking good.
The book is
Look at Ari. Hey, Ari.
The book is absolutely beautiful. It's just a wonderful jewel that every family should own. And before we're done, we want to make sure we tell people how they can get their copy of the book and get it for themselves, for their household. But it's something that you want to give to people. People that used to live here ought to have this, because as you're saying, this is a pathway, a golden pathway down memory lane. And you can recall, you can see, and sort of be nudged toward examining the stories, the bubbles of awareness that make your life what it is today. And if you don't have this kind of documentation, you simply are not able to access in a way that is meaningful all of these rich histories, rich stories that give us fuel for the future. You know, one of the things is everybody's always interested in notable people. And I know that's a loaded term because everybody is notable, but you know what I mean when I say notable people. So Dr. Crutchfield, who are some of the notable people in this book to you? And with due respect to everybody, because we all are.
You know, everybody is. You're correct. And speaking of that, one of the other committee members in one of our photographers, my daughter Olivia, I think she's in the process of signing on right now. Okay, so I think with me growing up in the Twin Cities, I saw a lot of the African American physicians. I knew the community. My father was the president of the Minnesota Black Physicians Group, and growing up and attending the meetings, because it was a family affair. They'd bring spouses, they'd bring kids, all the kids would play together. But you know, I realized for all of us, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and these books are the past giants whose shoulders we stand on. But I remember physicians like Dr. Rodney England and Dr. Cassius Ellis, and all the great physicians that came before us. They're all in the book. Like you said, these are just wonderful references. It's memory lane of fantastic Minnesotans that did great things for the people here. So
I'm reminded.
And I just wanted to add that
Sure.
our cover was shot by Olivia Crutchfield, who is a rising star and a college student in New York City. So she did a fantastic job.
Well, kudos to Olivia. Absolutely marvelous work. Thank you so much. And I want to give credit to the Minnesota Historical Society, who's published this book and under whose auspices we're convening this virtual book release. This is a wonderful idea. It's a great opportunity. And before we finish, I want you all to talk about the relationship with the Minnesota Historical Society Press. I think it's precious and want to give them kudos for taking this on. You know, how did you decide who does not make the book? How do you decide who gets in and who doesn't get in?
you know that I'll jump in here, and also I see that my daughter Olivia has joined us here too. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Olivia.
Hello.
I'm working right now, so I can't stay for the entire duration, but I'm so excited about the book. I'm so happy about the launch. I just wanted to say hi to everyone while I'm here.
Well, take a minute and talk about your participation. What did you do, and how did you do what you did, and how do you feel about it? And first of all, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm a photographer and I took a lot of pictures for the book, a lot of headshots. And obviously, like, this was a lot of organization from a lot of people to schedule the headshot days and connect the different people that were involved. But I shot headshots, I set up backdrops, I edited the pictures. Yeah, that was my main role for that.
Fulfilling, rewarding for you?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm really proud of it. I'm at work right now doing a photo shoot, and I was sharing with the senior client that I'm working with about the book, and she thought it was really cool too.
Well, congratulations. Stick around as long as you can
You.
and jump in where
Yes.
you feel like it, okay? And we
Okay.
appreciate you. We congratulate you for your excellent, excellent work. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And
so
I'm going to
much.
jump in as proud father. And not only was she one of the committee members at large, and she's one of the photographers, she's also featured in the book as one of the rising stars. So I'm very proud of her.
Well, you know,
Thank
I love this so much because it's a family project, two families, two great families, right? And we talked about that in the beginning. The Scotts have multi-generational presence here, the Crutchfields, multi-generational. And in effect, what you're presenting is the intergenerational reality of our community as a solid core defining characteristic of who we are. We don't hear that much. We hear about the destruction and the dismantling of the Black family, but from our side, we know that the families that we're part of and the lineages that we are part of are real. And so talk about that. You mentioned a little bit about your family of doctors, Dr. Crutchfield and the Scott educators, communicators. What do you think this project can do to elevate the appreciation of Black families, Black leadership, Black advancement? What do you think, Dr. Crutchfield?
Well, like I said, once again, this is something that's going to be of extreme historical value, but it also brings attention to people who are currently doing great things in Minnesota. And one of the other things, too, is my father and my brother are also on the project, so I give them kudos for this, too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Anthony, families, what does it mean to you? What about how does this, in your mind, impact, influence, affect families in our community?
Well, I think it really does. I've had a chance to speak to students. I did a talk over at a charter school in St. Paul where I brought a lot of dad's work, a lot of photos, a lot of other things. And I think what it can do is it can spur the young people to see where we've come from and to show where that they can go. And with this emphasis on the 21st century, we're really trying to bridge. We're really trying to get, for dad started in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and now we're in 2000 and beyond. And so we think it's going to be an inspirational and educational and hopefully a spiritual type of a thing to motivate the young people to, follow their dreams, whatever that may be.
Let me ask you both to talk more about your own personal genealogies. You talked about your dad and your generation right in front of you, Dr. Crutchfield. But tell me more about the family lineages that you are part of and how that sense of continuity of history influences your movement in community today.
Well, I think with my family, it's very interesting. My grandparents moved here from West Virginia My father is from Alabama, and he's from a small town outside of Birmingham called Jasper, Alabama. And when he was growing up, he was actually valedictorian of his class. Unfortunately, in the Old South, being valedictorian of your class in black meant nothing. In fact, there were no opportunities for him at all. And they were talking to him about doing, learning a trade, becoming a plumber, mechanic, and he wanted to become a physician, but there were no opportunities. So my grandfather, in his infinite wisdom, who owned the longest running black business in Alabama, he was a barber, had his own private shop for 60 years.
Mhm.
And I've got a sister in Minnesota. And in Minnesota, they're progressive, they're forward thinking. I need to get you up there. So he actually had my father leave home and move at age 15. And he moved to Minnesota, where he ended up going to North High School and then to the University of Minnesota, where he met my mother. So it's part of the whole movement of our family from the South up to the North. And it's mimicked in many other families. And the other question you asked earlier, I'm sorry I didn't answer it completely, was we were trying to be as inclusive as possible. We really didn't take anybody and not include them in the book. Everybody has a story. Everybody's important. And we're even talking about extending a website for future editions for people that were not in the book now that should be. And so in the next edition, maybe 10 or 15 years from now, we can have a ready update. But everybody's important. We didn't try to exclude anyone.
Okay, great. The Scotts, talk about your family. We talked about your dad, but what about the generations prior to your dad? Dr. Scott, maybe you first.
Well, I know my grandfather on my mother's side, George Smith, he was a very hardworking man. He was a janitor at the University of Minnesota. And he, worked hard, owned his own home. And, he was just really fun. I mean, he was a great grandfather. I mean, whatever I wanted, I couldn't get at home, I could get from him.
Grandpa's
So
got
he
it.
was awesome. He was awesome. So, and then I think just having a family, both of the families were involved in church. My mother was a church pianist at Bethesda Baptist Church for 30 years. And so, having that part is very important to me, being involved in the church community. So I think just having those, great backgrounds of, supportive family members that were always encouraging me. My grandmother used to call me teacher all the time. Now, some years later, I'm a teacher. So it was very encouraging to, get those words when you're young, because you don't know if it's going to stick and become a reality.
Anthony?
Well, yeah. Well, Dad, he was raised in Chicago. He was actually born in Greenville, Mississippi. And he tells me he was born in Greenville because his mother wanted him to be born in Mississippi with a midwife who birthed all of the women in the family. And so that Southern connection, them coming up from Mississippi, my mother being from Birmingham, born and raised there. And they came together here in Minnesota in the late 40s. And how it came to be is my grandmother, my father's mother, she had passed away. And so his uncle was an AME preacher, AME reverend. And he was sent up here to preach at St. James AME Church over on Snelling Avenue here in Minneapolis. And it just so happened that my grandmother's brother had already come to Minneapolis and lived over on Snelling, and he was a deacon at that church. So that's where they started, and that's where they met, at that church, due to the fact that my uncle, Reverend William Grossley, was called up here to preach at that church. So we have a lot of background here in the Twin Cities, and I think coming through the South, all of us have a lot to relate to.
Who wants to summarize the foreword by Mahmoud Al-Qadi, one of the great leaders and thinkers of our community, is the writer of the foreword of the book. Talk about that, if you would, Dr. Scott. What message was Brother Mahmoud giving us?
Well, I think he's always a dynamic speaker and definitely a dynamic writer. And I think what he, was trying to relate to us that, there is talent in the African American community. Even though we don't look like the majority of people, that are in Minneapolis, we are doing great things and awesome things. And I think he illustrated that so clearly. And then he sums it up by ending with the famous poem by Langston Hughes. And so, I mean, he really tried to express that, we are talented, we are strong, um, and we're here. So I think that's also something, and I'm very.
I'm going to actually read the last 2 or 3 paragraphs of his excerpt of his introduction or his foreword, because I think they're powerful. Dr. Mahmoud Al-Qadi says, this compilation by Minnesota's Black Community Project salutes a cross-section of highly successful Black citizens, including civic and political leaders, and enlightened clergy, actors, artists, educators, lawyers, business professionals, entertainers, and sports stars. Thank you, Minnesota's Black Community Project, for this volume entitled Minnesota's Black Community in the 21st Century. It serves as a gift to all Black Minnesotans, especially our children. As they grow into life, they will appreciate and honor this legacy, which will help them to understand and value and build upon who they are as a deeply rooted part of the making of Minnesota and America. Lastly, he says, the emotional undertone of this volume represents something that is completely and compellingly human. There is something strangely and hauntingly beautiful too. It is suggestive of the sentiment of Black America's finest poet laureate, Langston Hughes. And it goes on to present the poem, I Too, where Langston Hughes says, I too sing America. So that's a powerful introduction and well-written, clear and powerful. We're going to take questions. If people who are listening online have questions or comments for any of the participants in the panel, feel free to send them to us via Facebook, and we'll be sharing them and discussing them or distributing them among the panel participants. In the meantime, I want you to let people know where they can get the book. Anthony, where can people buy this book?
You can get the book through the Historical Society. You can also get the book online at Amazon. And it is, I know, in a number of the bookstores here in the Twin Cities. But you can start with the Historical Society or Amazon, and you'll find those books readily available.
One of the places they can get it, they can pick up signed autographed copies, autographed by you, Anthony, is a bookseller in St. Paul called the Next Chapter Booksellers at 38th and Snelling near McAllister. And they've got a limited number of copies that you signed, so people can get over there and pick up autographed copies of the book. And maybe there'll be some more screenings as we get past COVID-19. We'll have to do some kind of readings and presentations or book signings, but we know we can't do that right now. But people can get the book right now, so let's look for that. Would you all talk more about the role of Dr. Janetta Sims? She created this We Are Still Here series, and what is the contribution of that series, of that work, to the book?
Yes, Dr. Janetta Sims is a colleague of mine. Her and I do a lot of writing together. We did numerous articles, one book project together, and she's just very talented. I enjoy working with her. And when I was telling her about the project, I know she had some poems that she had written. They seemed to fit really nicely. So I asked her if she could kind of do a poem introduction for every section of the book. And so for each section, like arts, entertainment, education, wrote a short poem, talking about we are here. So for example, in the arts and entertainment, she says, you can hear us, we're soulful. Yes. We laugh, we sing, we act, we joke. In all that we do, we are talented, we are here. So she does a really nice introduction for every section to prove the point that we are here in this area. And she does that book. She is a dean of the Graduate College at the University of Central Oklahoma in Edmond, Oklahoma.
Wonderful. You all have been doing projects in the community as well as part of this effort. Talk about some of the things that you're doing that people have been involved in and benefited from alongside this work.
Well, we've had several seminars, usually around the Black History Month. We've had seminars where we've invited the community. We had an awesome program where we just honored the history of the medical profession and the Black medical profession here in the Twin Cities. And the Dr. Crutchfield family was actually there at the meeting. Dr. Crutchfield, Dr. Crutchfield II, Dr. Crutchfield III, they were part of a panel. And I tell you, it was just a riveting discussion. We talked about the barriers that they went through to go through their profession, but also began to talk about access and how important access to healthcare is. So we had some real great discussions on that. We had another program where we had Commander Charles Adams from the Minneapolis Police come, basically to talk to the community about let's keep our kids safe and how we do that. And he had a great talk. He actually came in with Ron Edwards. And so I saw him a little while after that. I said, do you remember coming into our meeting, Mr. Adams, with Mr. Edwards? He said, yeah, I had to bring my muscle with me. The commander. And so we also had one on photography. We highlighted the Black photographers in the Twin Cities area, the history of that. Our most recent one, we actually had the artist, Setu Jones, presented on his work, and he's a nationally renowned artist. He and I went to high school together, and believe it or not, his mother and my father graduated from DuSable High School together at the same time. So they grew up together. So we've had the artists, the policing, and we're going to continue the programming. I've also gave a presentation last February for the Star and Tribune, and they are really behind what we're doing. And they also want to talk to me about some other things with the nonprofit that maybe we can do some summer jobs or some type of things for the community too. So we're looking at broadening our focus, but at the same time keeping it on a positive note for the young people and the coming generations.
Dr. Crutchfield, this is along the lines you were talking earlier. I always tell a story about being in London and visiting cousins there, and my cousin gave me a tour of the city on one of the open-air double-decker buses, right? And on every intersection in downtown London, there are magnificent statues. Lord this, and Duke that, and Count this, and Earl of that, King this, and Queen that, Prince this, and Prince that. And so you drive around for an hour or two, and everywhere you turn is a reminder of who you are, if you are a Londoner or an English person. And so it strikes me that too often we have not had the opportunity or taken the responsibility of placing our markers in the world so that generations from now know who we are, who we were. And I applaud you so much, because I think the spirit of Walter Scott and of you all is a spirit that acknowledges the importance of being able to define our own reality and to create our own story, manage our own story. You've heard the story that, I'm not going to say that. The story about who prevails, the victor in conflict is the one that tells the story. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have to operate in a way, and this book is a reflection of our intent to continue to survive and to prosper and to move towards a victory that reflects the best of humanity. That's what I wanted to say. And our victory doesn't mean somebody else's defeat. It means the liberation of all human beings. Dr. Crutchfield, what do you think? I mean, that's how this is a passionate and mission work. What do you think about that?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think this book is an excellent way of starting that promotion, because it does take the people who we are. And you're right. Oftentimes the victors write the history, but we can be our own victors. Mm-hmm. And this is what this book is doing. It's pointing to all the successful, great people who've made significant contributions. Like I said, the shoulders of the giants that we all stand on. So, and I'm just so proud to be part of this project, and I'm so happy that it does such a nice thing for all Minnesotans, especially Black Minnesotans.
Chandra, jump in. Your thoughts.
Well, I think that, I think the timing was good, for our book to come out. I mean, we wanted it to come out a little bit earlier, but I think the timing was right because, like I said earlier, the focus has been always on the negative aspect of what African Americans are doing. So, this is a fine time, a great time to kind of highlight what we're doing positively and put it in a book form. So I'm very grateful for that. And like I said, I'm just so excited that it's out and have been getting so many nice compliments from people on the book. And it's just really exciting.
I think we had another question, if we can put it up. Yeah, Ron Wetzel. Ron, thank you for listening. Ron says, one of the things I have found powerful about Walter's book was the presentation of normal, regular, hardworking people. Does this book do that as well? What do you think, Anthony?
Yes, it does. We tried to get a microcosm of the community, and as like Dr. Crutchfield said, everybody's important. Everybody's work is important. Everybody's willingness to get out and do for themselves is important. So we feel there was no effort to exclude anybody by any means. We think just like Dad's books, and you'll see his earlier books, you'll see people working in a variety of fields. I mean, I'm talking about using their hands or using their labor or using their minds in education. So we feel that we're following along that same path. And yes, I would answer an affirmative yes to that question, that we are obviously continuing in that vein.
Right. And I'd also add that, with this book, we did focus on rising stars as well, which I think expands my father's work a little bit because we wanted to really show that, that there's a lot of young people out there that are doing some great things. So I think that was one thing that we added that was outstanding.
Well, let's take a minute, Dr. Scott, and acknowledge some of those rising stars. You've got your book handy. Why don't you flip open your book and let's say the names of these rising stars. I think they always deserve to be lifted up and highlighted and applauded. So
and as she's looking that up too, we had the compilation of the other 3 previous books, and I kept that at my office. We have it in the reception area. And I talked to many patients about, a lot of patients had questions, and they would say what a great book it was. I said, hey, do you want to be in the next one? So we took all comers. And I think the last one I talked to was a guy by the name of Nate Talton. He's just a barber. He said, this is a fantastic book. I said, well, you should be in it. So he's in the book too. So we try to be as inclusive as possible.
What that tells me, Dr. Crutchfield, is there's this capacity in our community and in our people to celebrate and lift up and revel in our magnificent ordinariness. That ordinary is powerful, right? And that we as a people have an ability to bring deep appreciation and deep respect to each other. And that's what I hear you saying. And that was, I think, the point behind the question. But Anthony, you and Dr. Crutchfield and Dr. Scott have addressed that, I think, in a way that's reflective of how we are, what our culture does bring. And why it's important to have this conversation is that if you only view our people by what quote unquote mainstream media says, you get a warped sense. You get an untruth that is so unworthy of humanity. It's just as unworthy as the untruth that holds up the illusion of white supremacy, right? And so that is a intentional or not conspiracy that damages humanity. And I think it's essential, it's important that what you are doing and what we do as communicators addresses that inequity and rights it by doing right, being right, and telling the truth as we understand it, and in a way that we speak to ourselves, our children, our families, and we speak to the world at the same time. Again, I applaud you for doing that. Here's another question as you're looking, Dr. Scott. Can you share your thoughts on the history and strength of the African American community in South Minneapolis. I think Anthony and Shonda, did you guys grow up in South Minneapolis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk
Yes,
about
we
South
did.
Minneapolis. I mean, just be specific about the place and why it's important is because the whole world is watching South Minneapolis right now behind what happened with George Floyd. Talk about the South Minneapolis you grew up in.
I grew up in South Minneapolis. I guess when my family first came up here, we lived on 24th and 4th Avenue, right near Honeywell. And there was a group of people that lived in that area, went to a little school right there. And from there, we moved to the Franklin Avenue area. And one thing I always have to say about mom and dad, everywhere we lived, we were across the street from a school. Every single house we lived in was one block, no more than one block from the school. So my job was always to take my brother Walter to school when it was his turn, because you'd have to go home for lunch. And so we'd have to go back and I have to make him a peanut butter sandwich or what have you. And my brother Walter's job became taking her to school and seeing that she got to school. And Shonda's job became taking George and helping George. But we moved my grandmother moved to 39th and 3rd Avenue. And that was about the mid to late 50s. And that's where I got to know everybody in the South Minneapolis area, even though I actually went to school at Adams back down on Franklin Avenue where I lived. And eventually we moved to the 46th Street area, that neighborhood, and I attended Ramsey, which is now Ellen Page School. I attended Washburn. And, growing up in South Minneapolis, it just seemed like it was always a great community. Everywhere we went, and people seemed to follow. A lot of people that I lived with down by Franklin Avenue, I met with them again when we moved further south. And it just was always a very close-knit community. And I think it's really combined with St. Paul, because when I went to college at Mankato, I got to know just about the whole St. Paul, Rondo neighborhood. And I'm just as familiar with them because my first job, I was assigned to work on Selby Avenue, where I had an office with the state of Minnesota and it was across the street from the Urban League. And I got to know Willow Wilson and that whole LEAP staff. They had maybe 10 job developers. I can actually send someone over there to get a job. They could get an interview at that meeting. I mean, they could walk out of there with interviews for jobs. And so I think the communities have always been special. They've been close. I know St. Paul has really done a great job in commemorating the Rondo area that the freeway came through. But I also want to say that similar thing happened to Minneapolis. When 35W came through, it took a lot of homes, a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of houses, and it rerouted a lot of things through our community. As people would go to church in their communities and things evolve. But I think the community itself, from my perspective, has always been a very tight-knit community.
Did you find anything, Chandra, about the young people?
Yes. Well, the rising stars are not in a section by themselves. They're in the areas where the professions are. So
Sure.
you have to look through. But just to name a few, we have Terrence Briscoe. He's been a young actor with the Children's Theater, and he's been acting in many plays there, the Lion's King and so forth. So he's very talented. We also have Olivia Crutchfield, who was also earlier mentioned. She is a renowned photographer, and so doing that for quite some time. And now she's in college and she's still doing that. We do have Latana Corliss. She's a rising star. She's an artist, and that for several years within the Twin Cities while going. We also have Bryson Scott. He's a photographer and a graduate of MTC downtown Minneapolis. We also have Daniela Jones. She's a rising star in the rhythm and blues and gospel music area, and she's been doing that for the last several years. We also have Lakem. He's also a young rapper and singer in cities area. Like I said, we have quite a few rising stars that we're introducing because we want to make sure that they can be among the professional people. Just because they're young, that doesn't mean they can't be included.
I think that's a great idea. I think you're right on track. Emily Rutherford sent a note in. She asked, when you compiled all these biographies, did you notice any community spaces that stand out or that were fondly recalled multiple times? Is there a history project similar to the St. Paul community project mentioned regarding Rondo area? Is there a Rondo type project in South Minneapolis?
I've only heard of a project that is looking at the effects of the freeway coming through South Minneapolis. I think that eventually would probably be a similar type of event where we'll look at the businesses that may have been lost, or the homes or neighborhoods that might have been lost in the Black community and communities throughout the Twin Cities by the freeway. So I know that there is a project looking at that.
I'm hopeful that you all will continue to expand what you're doing and build on it and figure out ways to build a large look, as you have, of the Black community, but also be able to use technology and the support of both consumers, readers, families, and institutions like the Minnesota Historical Society and its press to do specialized pieces. You know, Dr. Crutchfield, you mentioned all the doctors, Dr. Brown, Senior and Junior, Dr. Abrams over in St. Paul, legacy, leadership, and servanthood. We don't talk enough about the Sterling Club over in St. Paul, or about the Nakarima in South Minneapolis, or some of the places in North Minneapolis that have come and gone. I was on the phone today with Tyrone Terrell talking about Jimmy Fuller's business in North Minneapolis, the Riverview Supper Club. So there's so much that we have to grab and remember and make sure we don't forget. Because if we don't do it, it won't be done. And I'm just applauding you and thanking each of you so deeply for taking this on and producing a masterful product that will keep us reminded about who we are and who we are becoming as well.
Right. Well, our future project, I just wanted to add that our future project is going to build off this book, and we're going to use it as a template to try to create a documentary on PBS, and that will be called Spotlight on Minnesota's African American Community. So we hope to go around to different people in the professional areas as well as the rising stars and highlight them, so you have more of a visual of what we're doing as well as a book.
Okay. Well, let's remind people again where they can get the book. I mentioned before, one of the places you can get it is at the bookstore in St. Paul. Next Chapter Booksellers in St. Paul. It's at 38th and Snelling Avenue near McAllister College, where they have a limited number of copies signed by Anthony Scott. And other places they can get the book, Anthony?
Yes, it's on Amazon and through the Historical Society. And I think there'll be some more information as you go to the Historical Society about specific local locales where you can pick up the book.
Okay, we're coming to the end of the hour, but I want to take another minute or two just to go around and ask you each for parting statements. And again, on behalf of the residents, the citizens of Minnesota, I'm taking the opportunity to give you praise and to thank you. I really do. And thank the Historical Society for working with you to bring this project to life. But Dr. Crutchfield, what do you want people to be motivated to do, getting and enjoying this product, Minnesota's Black community in the 21st century?
Well, once again, I'm so proud. My brother Christopher has been trying to sign on, but I guess he's backstage. So I want to say hi to him and thanks for trying to join us today. I think Andrew had some problems adding him. But what I want to say is I am so proud to be part of this project. And it is such a wonderful historical book. I'd also say, if you like the book, get the compilation of the 3 previous books so you have the complete collection. But it's a wonderful, wonderful book with many people, and we want to include everybody. We are all family. And so if there's anybody who feels like they were left out or not, let us know. We'll add you to the website, and we'll keep building. We'll keep getting better and better.
Where can they get the previous books? So they are available?
Yeah, they're also available online. They're available online, and the Historical Society has them. I'm thinking they're still available on Amazon also.
That's wonderful. That's great news. Shonda, parting thoughts here. What are your thoughts? What do you want people to take away?
Well, I'm just happy, like I said, that, we have the project finished, and I hope, people will, get a copy of it so they can sit down and look through it with their children, and that we can continue to bring more activities and more spotlight on Minnesota's African American community, because it is a dynamic, thriving community that, needs to be highlighted more within our own area here in Minnesota.
And Anthony, the parting words will be from you.
Well, I always keep thinking of my dad and how he went through what he went through to get all these books done. And, in going through this process, I did find a book that he did that he didn't quite finish. It's a little magazine. There's 15 advertisers in the magazine, and they're all Black businesses in North Minneapolis, St. Paul, and South Minneapolis. So I think the work that we're doing, we want to continue in that vein to show and educate while we do our work. And I'm just ecstatic that the book has came out, that we've had the work with the nonprofit board, the Historical Society, the library, and I think we've got more to come. So look forward to it.
Well, with that, I want to tell you again, thanks for all your work, for the vision, and for the success of this great project. Tell our viewers that if you like this program, do just that, like it and share it, archive it, send it to your friends, and let people know that this work is available, that it's ongoing as well, and that the intent of the collaborating families here is to be expansive and inclusive. More is yet to come. I'm Al McFarland, and I thank you again on behalf of the Minnesota Black community in the 21st century virtual book launch event. On behalf of the Minnesota Historical Society Press, I thank you and say good night. We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.